Good morning, everyone. Moderator, I'm not sure, can you just speak again? We're having a little bit of difficult time hearing you.
Certainly, this is the moderator. Is this any better?
It is, thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, I think we need to call roll.
Dr. Solicito? Present. Dr. Grant?
Present.
Dr. Noland? Here. Ms. Pulowski? Here. Ms. Prado is absent. She will be joining us around 10:45. Dr. Bradbury?
Here.
We have a quorum.
All right, great. Well, welcome, everyone. Good morning. We'd like to begin this meeting with a land acknowledgement, which is a public recognition of the Indigenous peoples who have been dispossessed and displaced from their ancestral homelands and territories. A land acknowledgement is the first step towards creating a policy of inclusion that recognizes the culture, history, and continued contributions of the original caretakers of the land on which this meeting is held. This statement is made to acknowledge the Nisenan, the Southern Maidu, Valley Plains and Miwok, and the Patwin Wintun people, as well as Sacramento's only federally recognized tribe, the Wilton Rancheria. This acknowledgement also marks the Board of Veterinary Medicine's commitment to begin working with these tribes on issues of mutual concern. Additionally, today, I'd like to also say Happy Veterinary Technicians Week and acknowledge the RVTs participating today and all of the RVTs out there. Thanks for your hard work and dedication to the profession and the animals. So with that, let's start with agenda item 2, public comment on items not on the agenda. And just note that the board may not discuss or take any action on any matter raised during the public comment section, except to decide whether to place the matter on the agenda for a future meeting. Is there any public comment in the room? Seeing none, moderator, would you open it up to public comment online, please?
Certainly. If anyone connected through WebEx would like to make a public comment for an item that is not on the agenda, you may either raise your hand by clicking on the hand icon, or you may look for the question mark icon, typically in the bottom right of your WebEx screen. Click that and type the word comment into that text box and send. Each person will have, 3 minutes to speak with a 15-second warning. And again, this is for items that are not currently on the agenda. Are there any requests for comment? And I do not see any requests. Shall I close the public comment feature?
Yes, please.
Thank you.
Thank you. So next up is agenda item 3, review and approval of board meeting minutes. For 3A, Ms. Berber is not with us. I guess I probably should have mentioned in the opening remarks, she had to resign from the board due to just work issues. So that's a loss for us, but since she's not here today, we aren't going to be voting on that. And Jessica, can you explain that a little better?
Yeah, so if members recall, at the last meeting, we had to table the May minutes because we had 2 people who abstained who were not present at the meeting. Ms. Berber was also not present, so we were hoping that at this meeting she would be able to cast her vote and we could adopt the minutes. But because she has now resigned, what we're asking is to table this until January, and those who have abstained, if they can watch the movie, watch the webcast. It's a riveting movie, and then review the minutes, and then you can vote whether you feel that the minutes reflected what happened in the meeting. So that's what the plan would be for January. So if you've already reviewed the riveting movie and the meeting minutes, you are able to vote today, which would be fantastic. I did. Good. We can vote then.
Fantastic. I guess we should have asked questions. Thank you for being so diligent. Okay, So we will go ahead and discuss item 3A. Is there any comments from the group, from the board?
I have one.
Yes,
So,
Ms. Pulowski.
I was also present, so it helps, but I did watch it. There is a question that was typed into chat at 3:06:59, which was not addressed, and it was during the discussion Q&A period, and the moderator says you can type in the chat.
Do you have a page number where that is?
Oh, I didn't do that. Hold on. I did, actually, but, oh, I printed because of this very reason. I printed, because I had to be prepared like I was last time, like I looked for last night. So the problem is it's not in the minutes. It's not reflected. So this is the problem.
That's okay. It would be helpful, though, for us to know where in the minutes.
Where it should go.
That's a good question, because it's going to be, where would we go here? It's going to be where, oh, why didn't I mark that? Hold on, I'm getting there. 11. I'll have to look that up to be exact. It should be at, I can go back into it, but I believe, hold on, I have it. 3:06, right before, on page 12 of 15. So, actually, right at the bottom of 11 of 15. So it's going to go in there, and I'm going to have to look exactly where, because I believe it's right above Senate Bill 372, right after Dr. Miller's comments above there.
Okay.
David Kirk typed a question. The amendments you noted are very reasonable. If they're accepted into the bill, will you support, and should that be incorporated into the motion? And we never read it into the minutes. We never addressed the question. So I know we don't address the question, but we didn't even read the question. So I just want to make sure it gets, since we do say you can type your question into the chat, we should probably reflect it into the minutes, correct?
I don't know, this,
And that's,
this
I don't
hybrid
know that
meeting is
answer.
interesting, yeah.
I don't know that answer. But we say you can type your question into the chat, but we didn't read the question. I know we don't address the question, but I don't know the answer to that.
Typically, I think Solid advises the public on WebEx that they can type that they want to make a comment. So it's not, you know, type any question you have and we'll respond to it. It's please let us know you want to make a comment, and then we will unmute you. So,
Yeah, I think at the prior meetings we've had where if they were having technical difficulties, they were able to make their comment in the chat. So perhaps we just make a note here that what the comment was.
Yeah, I think that would be a good idea. I mean, we do have the verbal comments typed out, so I think to be fair in the future, if we can try and make sure any comments that are received via chat also get reflected in the minutes.
What if they are unable to? Yeah, I mean, this is the only way they can communicate.
Well, that's what I'm saying is.
Yeah, no, I'm just saying I want to make sure that we can do this, so.
I think for purposes of these minutes, we can make the revision because you are able to let us know what the insertion is, the text to be inserted on page 11 above number 2, Senate Bill SB 372, right after Dr. Miller's comment, we'll insert David Quirk's typed comment. Oh, wait, it's on page 9.
Is it really?
At the bottom of page 9, it says David Kirk commented, the amendments the board noted are very reasonable. He asked if they are accepted in the
So
bill.
I missed that.
Okay.
I apologize. I read through it, listened to it, and read through it and still missed it, and I apologize.
Okay, so no revisions. Good
Great.
talk.
Do we have a motion?
I will move to accept the minutes of the May 24th, 2023 meeting minutes.
A second.
Fantastic. Any more discussion? Seeing none. Public comment in the room? Seeing none. Moderator, can you please open it up to public comment online?
Certainly, and if anyone would like to make a comment on the motion or the minutes, you may look for the hand icon, click that to raise your hand, or you may look for the question mark icon, type the word comment and click send in order to request a comment. Each commenter will be given 3 minutes to speak with a 15-second warning. Would anyone like to comment on the motion or the first set of minutes? And I do not see any requests for comment. Shall I close that feature for now?
Yes, please.
Thank you.
We call for a vote.
Dr. Solocito?
Yes.
Dr. Grant?
Yes.
Dr. Nolan?
Yes.
Ms. Pulowski?
Yes.
Ms. Prado is absent. Dr. Bradbury?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Great. We can move on to meeting minutes from July 19th through 20th. Agenda item 3B. Any comments from the board? Don't see any. I didn't have any corrections. Do we have a motion?
I move to accept.
A second.
Great. Public comment in the room? Seeing none, moderator, please open it up to public comment online.
Certainly, if anyone has any comment on the motion or the July minutes, you may look for the hand icon, click that to raise your hand, or you can look for the question mark icon, type the word comment in that text box and click send. Each speaker will have 3 minutes with a 15-second warning. Any comments on the July minutes? And I do not see any requests for comment. Shall I close that feature?
Yes, please.
Thank you.
Okay, let's call for a vote.
Dr. Solocito?
Yes.
Dr. Grant?
Yes.
Dr. Nolan?
Yes.
Ms. Pulowski?
Yes.
Ms. Prado is absent. Dr. Bradbury?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Okay. Great. Well, that was painless. Okay. Now we are going to welcome Ms. Gear for the presentation today for report and update on the Department of Consumer Affairs. Good morning.
Hello.
Okay.
Hello and good morning, President Bradbury, Vice President Solocito, Executive Officer Sieferman, and members of the board. I'm Melissa Gear, Deputy Director for Board and Bureau Relations, and I appreciate the opportunity to share the Department of Consumer Affairs update this morning. I have several updates and reminders to share, starting with an update on DCA's DEI efforts. But before I jump in, I wanted to take an opportunity to thank Member Maria Sperber-Salazar for her commitment and service to the board and for protecting California's consumers. Now I will move into today's update. On September 29th, 2023, the DEI Steering Committee held its quarterly meeting. The committee discussed employee engagement, cultural events and observances, membership composition, DEI training, DEI hiring principles, and the development of a DEI webpage for employees. The committee plans to roll out DEI hiring principles and launch the internal DEI webpage by the end of the year. Outside consultant Dr. Bernard Gibson provided in-person DEI training to over 150 DCA managers, supervisors, and leaders on October 4th. In addition, Dr. Gibson provided virtual training to board members on October 9th. And for those that attended the training, please be sure to take the survey emailed after the training. Your opinions are vital in determining future training needs and opportunities. Dr. Gibson has 20 years corporate experience managing teams and training employees in business effectiveness. He also has extensive teaching experience at various colleges, including serving as adjunct faculty since 2006 at the University of Massachusetts for the School of Business and Professional Studies. On November 7th, 2023, UMass consultant Christopher Veal will provide training entitled DEI Dialogue for Leaders for DCA managers, supervisors, and leaders. Veal's training will include example language and tools, discuss psychological safety and how it impacts these conversations, and include interactive discussion around challenges leaders are facing. DCA encourages all executive officers and their management teams to attend. Finally, the DEI Steering Committee is pleased to highlight the work of the Board of Barbering and Cosmetology, or BBC, which is collaborating with the Los Angeles County Probation Department to launch the first youth and county-level barbering program. The board hopes to have it operational by late winter. Furthermore, the board has been collaborating with the Department of Corrections and Rehabilitation, or CDCR, to launch its testing program with state correctional facilities, expanding to include barbering, and it is anticipated that this will be a large program with 4 facilities committing to include barbering schools. If your board has DEI activities you would like to share with other boards and bureaus, please share them with BBR. Next, as you may have heard, on September 13th, Senate Bill 143 was signed by Governor Newsom and became effective immediately. Included in this bill was language related to the Bagley-Keene Open Meeting Act, which allows for remote public meetings without notice locations accessible to the public until December 31st, 2023. In addition, Senate Bill 544, a bill also pertaining to the Open Meeting Act, was signed by the governor. Commencing on January 1st, 2024, 4 meeting options will be available under Bagley-Keene. Option 1, traditional single location option, which permits majority of members gathered at one publicly noticed and accessible location. However, no members may participate remotely, and there is no requirement to allow remote public participation. Option 2, traditional teleconference option, which allows members at different publicly noticed and accessible locations connected via phone or WebEx, and has no requirement to allow remote public participation. Option 3, new teleconference option, states the majority of members can gather at one publicly noticed and accessible location. Extra members above a majority can participate remotely from private, non-public sites and must allow remote public participation. Option 4, new advisory body teleconference option permits all members can participate remotely from private, non-public sites. Must have at least one publicly noticed and accessible location where at least one staff member is present and where the public can participate in the meeting, and must allow remote public access. We encourage boards to work closely with their board councils to ensure compliance with the Open Meeting Act. Please keep the following reminders in mind as you begin to prepare to close out this year and look ahead to 2024. First, as we approach the final months of this year, there are 2 DCA-wide mandatory trainings that if you haven't already completed, we ask that you do so immediately. This includes sexual harassment prevention training and information security awareness. All DCA employees and appointees, including board and advisory council members, will need to complete the sexual harassment prevention training this year. Board members must take the 2-hour supervisory training. This training is required every odd number year and is online, self-paced, in approximately 2 hours. Additionally, board members with an assigned DCA email are required to complete the Information Security Awareness Fundamental Training. Both the Sexual Harassment Prevention Training and Information Security Awareness Training are available in the department's learning management system. If board members need assistance in accessing LMS and these trainings, please reach out to Board and Bureau Relations. Second, Board members must complete board member orientation training, also known as BMOT, within 1 year of their appointment or reappointment. The final BMOT of this year was conducted on October 10th. Once the 2024 dates have been finalized, Board and Bureau Relations will notify your executive officer or bureau chief, as well as notify members who need to take it but were unable to do so this year. Members can register for this training via LMS. Third, on September 13, 2023, Governor Newsom signed Senate Bill 447, authored by Senate President Pro Tem Atkins, which ends California's restriction on taxpayer-funded travel by state agencies and departments to states that have adopted discriminatory anti-LGBTQ+ laws. SB 447 eliminated California's restricted states travel list and created a new public awareness project that will consult with community leaders to promote California's values of acceptance and inclusion of the LGBTQ+ community across the country. In the past, several out-of-state trips requested by boards were not authorized because the travel was to a state on the restricted travel list. This will lift that restriction and permit out-of-state travel to all states if the trip is critical to the functions and needs of the board. If you have any questions, please reach out to your executive officer or Board and Bureau Relations for additional information. And lastly, this year's DCA Our Promise State Employees Giving at Work campaign co-chairs are Monica Vargas, Deputy Director of Communication, and Yvonne Durantes, Assistant Deputy Director of Board and Bureau Relations. This annual campaign gives state employees, including board members, an opportunity to support nonprofits through a one-time donation or payroll deduction. These contributions make a positive impact by providing vital resources to those experiencing poverty, homelessness, food insecurity, and also offer support to causes such as veterans, animals, the environment, and more. We hope you will join the state's campaign and contribute to a nonprofit or nonprofits of your choice. With your assistance, DCA will continue its tradition of generosity and caring for our communities. This year's campaign officially kicked off on October 5th and runs through December 31st. For additional information, please contact Yvonne Durantes. And as I close, I wanted to share that the Business Consumer Services and Housing Agency Secretary, Lourdes Castro Ramirez, recently announced that she has been appointed to serve as the Chief of Housing and Homelessness in the Office of Los Angeles Mayor Karen Bass, effective November 2nd. Secretary Castro Ramirez has been an extraordinary partner to DCA and the boards and bureaus. She has also been a consumer protection champion. We are grateful for her leadership, and we will miss her very much. Thank you again for this opportunity, and I welcome any questions from the board.
Great, thank you very much. That's exciting for Ms. Ramirez. Yeah, that's really exciting. I wanted just to comment that we are very glad that the travel restrictions have been lifted. It allowed us all to go to Kansas City and participate in our the AAVSB, so that was exciting. Yeah, we had a lot of this information in the leadership meeting, and thanks for bringing it to the board. Is there anybody here who has questions? Don't see anybody on the board, and I don't think we have any board members online. So, any public comment in the room? Seeing none. Moderator, would you please open it up to public comment online?
Certainly. If anyone has any question or comment on the DCA updates, you can look for the hand icon and click that once to raise your hand, or you can look for the question mark icon, click that, type the word comment, and click send. Each speaker will have 3 minutes to speak with a 15-second warning. Are there any requests to comment? I do not see any requests. Shall I close the public comment for now?
Yes, please.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. See you next time. Okay, so now we're going to be moving on to agenda item number 5 with Ms. Schufelt presenting a review, discussion, and possible action of the Multidisciplinary Advisory Committee. While she's getting set up, I just wanted to let everyone know that we are going to shift the agenda order just a bit. After agenda item 5, we're going to be moving to agenda item 7B, which is a regulation item, and we just would like Dr. Sullivan present to help participate in that, since he worked so hard on that that reg package. So that is just some notice for everyone waiting for the MDC interviews, and I apologize if that's causing any inconvenience. So, Ms. Schufeld?
Thank you very much. As you guys know, we had our most recent MDC meeting yesterday. We welcomed at that time our new public member, Kathy Bowler, as well as new veterinarian member, Dr. Waterhouse, as well as our new board RVT, Christy, to their first MDC meeting of this cycle. And also announced that Dr. Bradbury is stepping down from her role as our board member veterinarian and has appointed Dr. Grant to that position. So we are excited to have him join the MDC. But definitely we'll miss Dr. Bradbury. She's been instrumental on many of our subcommittees over the last 2 years. So we will miss you being at those meetings as well. So next we had 3 topics for discussion and potential recommendation to the board. Of those, 1 is ready to present to you today, and the other 2, I'll discuss our updates, but we've decided to table those until our January MDC meeting, and then bring them forward to the board for your consideration. So the item that was approved by the MDC to move forward is your agenda item 5B on shelter minimum standards. I'll go over this item in its entirety today as we're asking you to discuss and potentially take action on this item. So this is 5B, consideration of previously approved text to adopt California Code of Regulations, Title 16, Sections 2030.6 and 2035.5, shelter minimum standards, and update discussion and potential recommendation to combine newly proposed text to adopt CCR Title 16, Section 2030.4 on minimum standards for animal shelter premises with rulemaking to amend CCR Title 16, Sections 2030.05, 2030.2, and 2030.3, and adopt 2030.15 minimum standards for alternative veterinary premises. Dr. Sullivan was our MDC member on a subcommittee with a lot of help from Board Vice President Dr. Solicito on this. So background information, prior to 2015, the Veterinary Medical Board recognized many of the current minimum standards for animal premises were not applicable and or were extremely difficult for animal shelter premises to comply with. In addition, the board recognized the challenges shelters faced in obtaining a veterinarian to serve as a managing licensee of the shelter premises. From 2015 to 2019, board held 15 public meetings to discuss these issues. Meetings included input from the public and stakeholders, including California Animal Welfare Organization and the California Veterinary Medical Association. In 2019, the board approved a rulemaking proposal to adopt a new section, CCR 2030.6, which copied the majority of existing law and amended or removed some sections that the board felt did not apply to shelters. In addition, the proposal added a section 2035.5 specifying what animal health care tasks registered veterinary technicians and assistants or veterinary assistant controlled substance permit holders could do under written protocols of a veterinarian. That proposal is attached for reference as attachment 1. At the time of the approval, 20 rulemaking packages were pending in the board's regulation queue. Shortly after that proposal was approved, the shelter community raised concerns regarding the inability for some shelters who only administer preventative or prophylactic non-prescription vaccinations to comply with the regulations. As such, Assembly Bill 1535 created an exemption to the Veterinary Medicine Practice Act for individuals providing specified care to animals lawfully deposit with or impounded by a shelter not registered with the board, which is BPC 4827A5. In January 2022, the board's Regulation Council raised significant concerns with a similarly structured rulemaking package regarding minimum standards for alternate premises. The concerns primarily focused on the fact that the proposals contained a duplicative language to the existing minimum standards for fixed veterinary practices, which is CCR 2030. As such, the board directed the MDC to restructure the minimum alternate veterinary premises and shelter rulemaking packages to remove duplicative language and address concerns of board counsel. As discussed in more detail in the board's materials from our April 2023 meeting to initiate rulemaking, revise, and adopt minimum standards for alternate premises. The MDC worked with the board's regulation council and stakeholders to restructure the proposal and remove duplicative language. The proposed rulemaking would make all veterinary premises subject to the new general minimal standards for veterinary premises. However, for each alternate veterinary premises, the proposed language included exemptions from the minimum standards appropriate to the premises type. The board approved the proposal in Attachment 2 during its April 2023 meeting. So since the April 2023 meeting, the MDC Vice Chair, Board Vice President, Regulations Council, Executive Officer, and Board staff worked together to restructure the shelter premises proposal to mirror the approved minimum standards for alternate veterinary premises of CCR Section 2030.4. During that time, Regulation Council raised concerns about the text proposed at CCR Section 2035.5 involving clarity, including the meaning of the phrase limited medical care, which is undefined, and discussed further in Attachment 1, and involving a lack of authority for the board to essentially authorize delegation of discretion to shelter premises to determine what that limited medical care could be provided by an RVT unlicensed assistant or VACSP holder under a veterinarian's protocols according to the particular needs of the shelter location. It was determined that piece of the shelter proposal would need to be removed. On September 11th, 2023, the MDC Vice Chair and Board Vice President held a stakeholder meeting with various members of the shelter community, including California Animal Welfare Association and the CVMA. During that meeting, the stakeholders provided feedback and regulatory proposal was amended accordingly. The MDC Vice Chair also requested that Regulations Council research the legal meaning of impound for the purposes of possibly further defining in its proposal. Regulations Council advised that she could find no definition for impound as it relates to animals in law or regulation in California, and therefore, in using this word, California law presumes the ordinary meaning of the term to shut up or is in a pound or confined, to seize and hold in the custody of the law or take possession of. And as a result, we do not recommend adding a definition for impound to the proposal. So that is all of the background getting us to the point we were at yesterday. And so yesterday, Dr. Sullivan presented the subcommittee recommendations, which were approved by the MDC and here for your review. The subcommittee proposes the following language, replace the prior text approved by the board previously in Attachment 1 for the following reasons. So subsection A, the subsection would adopt a new definition of animal shelter premises, which is proposed to be defined as a building or portions thereof where veterinary services are provided to animals impounded by a privately or publicly operated agency or organization and does not meet the exception criteria in paragraph 5 of subdivision A of section 4827 of the code. Rationale for this is the definition includes all shelter premises that provide veterinary services to impounded animals. Also recognizes that for purposes of inspection, the premises may be part of the building because the shelter will also have the responsibility of impounding and boarding animals which are not part of the hospital portion of the building where veterinary services typically are provided. Also includes both privately and publicly operated agencies to provide notice to the regulated community regarding who would be expected to comply with these requirements. This subsection also excludes those smaller rural facilities that are exempt from the regulation by paragraph 5 of BPC 4827A. This change is necessary for consistency with the Practice Act and to avoid confusion about whether these requirements apply to these smaller rural shelters exempt from this section by statute. And changes recommended to subsection B would be to added to specify that unless otherwise provided in this section or 2030.3 relating to standards for vaccination on veterinary premises, animal shelter premises also providing veterinary services to privately owned animals that are not otherwise impounded shall meet all minimum standards specified in 2030. The rationale for this is adoption of this standard is necessary to ensure minimum standards for a shelter that is providing veterinary service to the public must still comply with 2030 to provide consumer protection at the same level as a non-shelter practice. The language description exemptions for shelters meeting certain standards for animals impounded or providing post-adoption services as described in this section and 2030.3 help ensure that there's no confusion regarding which standards control when specified services to privately owned animals are provided. There's two more. Do you want to stop and go through any of those, or should I just continue on to the last two parts? We're halfway.
I just want to make a clarification in the memo when it's talking about 2030.4A. The memo only reflects the exception criteria pursuant to paragraph 5 of subdivision A. The actual text is exception criteria pursuant to paragraphs 4 and 5 of subdivision A. So we're looking for both. Sorry, continue.
Okay.
We could stop here and just see if there's any comments.
I was wondering on the list of stakeholders that had participation, were any of the associations that accept donated horses, retired racehorses, involved at all? And second part of the question would be, do you see anything here that would affect the running of such facilities for donated horses? Negatively, I mean.
Yeah, so I do not believe anyone from those associations, at least not that I saw on the public record of those as stakeholders were present.
I believe Ventura County is involved in accepting donations or like horses, impounding them, you know, so.
And Dr. Grant, too, if you have other organizations in mind, what would be helpful if you provide that contact information to me, and then once it goes out to public comment, I can make sure to send them the language directly so they have it, and then if they have any concerns, we can address it at that time.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Okay. Go ahead.
Okay. So the subsection C would be
I'm sorry, I should ask for public comment.
Sorry.
Yeah, sorry, I need to see if there's any public comment in the room on
A or B?
A and B.
Thank you.
Don't
This is the
see any.
moderator. Is there any public comment in the room?
There's not, so go ahead, thank you.
You're welcome. If there's any public comment on sections A or B, if you could raise your hand by clicking on the hand icon or click on the question mark icon, type the word comment and click send. Each speaker will have 3 minutes with a 15-second warning. Any comments on sections A or B? Well, I see no request for comment. Shall I close the public comment feature?
Yes, please.
Thank you.
Okay, then I will continue with subsection C, which would establish that animal shelter premises providing veterinary services solely to impounded animals shall meet all minimum standards specified in section 2030 except for paragraph 3, a reception room and office or a combination of the two, 4, an examination room separate from other areas of the premises that of sufficient size to accommodate a doctor, assistant, patient, and client, and 5C, which is requirements post-assigned for the public when there are no personnel during any time the animal is left at the veterinary premises. Rationale for this is if a shelter is providing veterinary services to only impounded animal patients, there's no need to have a separate reception room and office or a combination of the two since they're not receiving privately owned animals. And in that situation, there's not a client for these type of animals. So as a result, that larger separate room for consultation is not needed. Since the requirement for posting a sign is intended to provide consumers with privately owned animals with this status information, and there's no client involved in this type of premises, the requirement will not be applicable to animal shelter premises. And subsection D, this proposal would require animal shelter premises providing only post-adoption services to animals adopted from the same premises within 30 days of adoption to comply with the requirements for impounded animals in subsection C. Rationale would be to ensure continuity of care in underserved communities and allow shelters to provide follow-up services for a limited duration of time at reduced cost. This proposal would permit shelter meeting with these requirements to comply with the more limited standards set forth in subsection C for 30 days post-adoption. These 30-day appointments often are post-adoption check-ins or suture removals and things like that. Any services provided beyond that time frame would need to meet with the minimum standards in Section 2030 as specified in subsection B of this proposal. So the MDC discussed this all yesterday and moved to, or approved moving it on to you for your consideration. So we would request, if you approve this proposal during your meeting, request the board review the attached rulemaking proposal and entertain a motion with the following things. Thank you. Go ahead.
Great, thank you so much. Yeah, it's clear that a lot of work was done here, and it sounds like the stakeholder meeting was one of the best related to this whole journey that's been going on. Yeah, it sounds like it was really constructive and collaborative and just what you would hope from a stakeholder meeting. So I just really am grateful to stakeholders for participating and for Dr. Sullivan and Dr. Solicito. Jessica, did you have something? Okay. Any questions, comments? Yeah, Dr. Nolan.
I think somebody else had their hand up. Who's it? Oh, Tara. Did you want to go first, Tara?
Sorry, I can't see you.
No
I'll try
problem.
and look over.
Yeah, just a minor technical issue to raise. Ms. Pulowski raised the issue in, I'm on page 23 of the meeting materials, agenda item 5B, attachment 3. Subsection B, it was unclear whether or not the word an, should be inserted in front of animal shelter premises to designate one animal shelter premises. Initially, I was looking at it, it looked like, it applied to all animal shelter premises, but when I look at subsection A, the definition of animal shelter premises means a building or portion thereof. So to me, that's indicative of one animal shelter premises, not all of them. So the recommendation is just to insert in subsection B, line 1, before animal, insert an. So it would designate one animal shelter premises. And the same correction in subsection C, insert an animal shelter premises, and also subsection D. So it would also read an animal shelter premises.
So, I mean, there's arguments either way because premises also is singular in our statute as well as plural. So I really don't think you need to put an in front of it, but if you want to and it's your preference, that's your call. I think it would be subsumed within the proposed motion because it's really a non-technical, a technical, non-substantive change. You wouldn't need to revise the current motion that's proposed in your packet on page 4. You could just move forward, but it's clearly up to you, and if you want to just let us know which way you want to go, that would help. Thanks.
Thank you. Dr. Nolan?
Yes, thank you. I think this is great. A lot of work, good work went into this. I do have one just question, and I apologize that I wasn't able to listen to the MDC meeting yesterday, but in subsection D, when we talk about the adoption services that are offered within a 30-day window, are we also talking about surgical services like spays? I mean, it's pretty broad, so I'm just wondering if a post-adoption service could include a surgery like a spay.
Yeah, so the discussion was that, yes, any services that the shelter's going to provide within that 30 days is still covered.
Okay. So then my question, and again, I don't know, I'm just questioning, at that point, this person that has adopted this animal is probably pretty attached to the animal if it's gone home and come back. And so the idea that we're not required to post a sign to tell them that there's no overnight personnel in case the animal does spend the night seems a little bit, I'm just questioning that a little bit. So what was the discussion about really being able to be transparent about personnel at the hospital or not, or at the facility? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Dr. Solicito?
Yeah, if I may comment on that. So that is part of the education that happens when an adoption is happening. So any adopter is aware of the ability and the capacity of each shelter to provide services, and that conversation happens when they initially take a pet home.
And I'm talking about the specific requirement to post a sign for the public when there is no personnel during any time an animal is left at the premises. So if the animal's left overnight, shouldn't that new adoptive owner be aware that no one's going to be there that night if the animal does have to spend the night?
You mean to say like at the hospital?
Maybe I'm misreading this, but according to this subsection D, any veterinary services provided beyond that time frame would need it. But before that time frame, they wouldn't need to actually post anything if the animal spent the night. Am I reading that wrong?
Yeah, okay. So the way that the animal shelter structure is, you have a separate kennel staff versus a separate clinical staff. And I think what we're referring to is the clinical staff. So at most, all of the animals that have surgery is already either being released to the adoptive parents because they will be able to take care of their adopted pet at the, at the end of the day. Now, for those that may have not been picked up, and a lot of shelters do this, what we prepare the animals ready to go home. Those animals are being cared for by the kennel staff.
So let me just see if I can, I'm not sure. So what you're saying is this is not relating to animals that have been sent home. These are for patients that have been spayed or neutered at a shelter that doesn't have facilities for privately owned animals, and within the 30 days after the procedure, they would be allowed to take care of the animals without some of the restrictions imposed by other premises.
Yes.
And these are not patients that are typically sent home, because the way this is worded, it sounds like if they've gone home and they need to be seen for veterinary services within 30 days, the way that I'm reading it too, I guess, they would be coming back to the shelter, but the shelter doesn't have private-owned animal facilities.
I think this is...
I think Jessica has her hand up. Is that...
Yeah, Jessica.
Yeah, and maybe if we can invite Dr. Sullivan up too, who was part of the discussion, he can assist. But from my recollection of the discussion, this was to accommodate any services provided to shelter animals within that 30 days, which could include spay and neuters if it happens. Regarding the signs, so you're talking about specifically the issue with the exempting from 5C, which is the requirement to post a sign. There was a lot of discussion from the shelter community of why they don't feel they should have to post a sign. A lot of times they described how the shelters are set up to where the public can't even get to the building because they don't serve the public. And so posting a sign didn't make any sense for them to do. But there was quite a bit of discussion on that specific requirement of posting a sign. And all of the stakeholders in the committee agreed not to have that requirement. But Dr. Sullivan, if you want to add anything else.
No, I think you addressed that very well. I think there was recognition by everyone there that these added requirements cost extra and would require the facilities to do a lot more than what they're able to, but they still wanted to be able to provide, rechecks, taking stitches out, just basic care for 30 days after they've left. And as Dr. Solicito mentioned, these animals are going out with consent forms, with information forms and paperwork saying, in case of, you know, here's the list of your adjacent hospitals. So we have, you know, our name is on the clinics in our area, the shelters in our area as a resource for those shelters. So I think the part of them already being home and then needing some service, I think is covered pretty well with the paperwork that the client is going home with, as we do with other services like mobile premises permits. The clients are receive paperwork advising them of other resources if needed.
Thank you. That helps clarify it. And I think the only part of subsection C that I struggle with, I think that not having those extra rooms, the office, the reception room, et cetera, makes total sense to me. I just, from a public consumer standpoint, get a little nervous if an animal has been home with someone that's adopted it. It becomes their pet. You know, they're starting to get attached to that pet. Then they take the animal back and don't realize that the animal does have to spend the night. No one's with the animal. I mean, there's no requirement to tell them whether there is someone or isn't someone. Now, again, you're saying, well, they probably tell them in the paperwork going home, but that doesn't really reflect what's in the statute. So that was my concern, but it may be I'm the only one that gets a little nervous about that one scenario. The stitch removal, the rechecks, all that sort of thing makes total sense. It's the animal that's gone through a major surgery, which a spay is, in my opinion, and that the owner that is now adopted that pet and is attached to that pet maybe should, for transparency's sake, should know whether someone is there with them or someone isn't.
If I may comment on that, and that is exactly what the education that happens when somebody adopts from the shelter is their understanding of the capacity of each shelter, you know, to provide services. Once an animal has been released, technically these adopters take the full ownership, and they are advised to be able to go to their own veterinarians for follow-up care.
Yeah, if I'm not mistaken, I know of shelters that require you to bring the animal back for the spay and neuter at their facility. So there are some shelters that require that.
It's called, yeah. So if, for example, an animal is not healthy enough to undergo surgery and we're able to adopt them out, when they do come, the same rules apply. We would have the conversation that you drop off the animal in the morning, you pick it up in the afternoon, but, you know, the responsibility for aftercare will still be yours. It's all about capacity.
Thank you.
So I just want to say that I see what you're saying, and I think the notion of printing and posting a sign being a huge issue, like a huge cost, seems, you know, relative to the other requirements, doesn't seem like a lot. I think it sounds like part of the issue was where would they even post the sign if there isn't really a clinic that they're bringing them to. So I can see both sides. Okay, yes, Dr. Sullivan.
Yeah, we had a lot of discussion in this area, and so approaching this with the group, with the entire group, we have to do some giving too. And we wanted to be sure that they didn't fall into the B class, because many of these shelters want these animals, and it's required by law, to go out spayed and neutered already. And yet they did not want to have the responsibility and expense of being a full-service clinic. So this was an accommodation to satisfy what our concerns were and what they could feel comfortably fulfilling.
Well, and the last thing I would want to do is to slow down the process of finding homes and spaying and neutering, you know, adoptable animals. I totally understand that. I just know that when you bring an animal in to go, you know, the animal's been home for a week or two, is, again, well enough to come back, you have to give the animal to somebody. So there's got to be a desk or trade-off door. I mean, there has to be someplace So in my mind, having a posted sign, whether it said there, if your animal spends the night, there will not be, people posted, or if your animal spends the night, there will be people here with them. It's a pretty simple thing. You either say yes or no so that the consumer is aware. So that's why but I'm happy to let it go. That's just my feeling is posting a sign is a lot less onerous than building a reception room, having an exam room, all of that sort of thing. It seems that a sign that might protect the consumer, or at least protect the transparency of communication between the service and the consumer might be a good thing. But again, I respect that you had a very robust conversation, and I just wanted to speak my piece. I'm happy to let it go.
Is there anyone else on the board who has any comments about that? Doesn't look like it. Dr. Grant?
Yeah, I guess I feel that making a sign and putting it out someplace isn't that onerous a thing, and it does give more of an air of transparency for everybody. They know if they're going to come back, that's what's going to happen.
Jessica?
Yeah, and just looking in the memo too on page 4, what talks about the rationale for excluding 5C, it does put in there that since the requirement for posting a sign is intended to provide consumers with privately owned animals with the status information, and there is no client involved in this type of premises, this requirement would not be applicable to animal shelter premises. But to Dr. Nolan's point, there are going to be instances where there does become a client within that 30 days, and so that would be showing that there could potentially be a client.
Can we remove the sign part from the exemption there?
Excuse me.
Yeah, Dr. Sullivan.
Or why don't we make the same requirement that they inform the public by written material as we do with mobile clinics? Because I think it's already being done on the information that goes with the client after when they pick up the animal. So I think that's how we should address it rather than, because the discussion was pretty robust. It was, they can't even get to the door. There's an outside gate that we want to protect.
Yeah.
And so if you're going to put a sign there, is it even going to be read?
I think
there was a lot of discussion along this line, and so let's satisfy our concern for consumer protection by putting it in a written notice with the client when they take the animal home, as we do with mobile practice.
I like that idea. Dr. Nolan?
I would like to get Dr. Salcido's opinion of that. Also, I appreciate Dr. Sullivan's.
I have to agree because, again, you have to take into consideration how shelters are structured. Not all facilities have abilities to have public access, after hours or anything. And that's why I think that was part of the conversation. It's not, I guess, taking it as away as a requirement for everyone to be posting signs, but some shelters are able to and do have signs. It's just not going to be a requirement because not everybody can comply. That's part of the conversation. And again, I want to emphasize all of this conversation really happens when an animal is sent home, and all of this information is, documented in the adoption documents. So.
Great. Yeah, so Tara, can we look at crafting, taking out the exemption, or not taking out the exemption, but adding some language that there's a requirement for these shelters to provide written notification to the adoptees that if there is not 24-hour.
I believe this is coming back to you, so maybe you can give us some time to do this, isn't it?
No, the NBC approved it.
Okay, good.
But this doesn't have anything to do with a 24-hour notice. This is just the fact that if it's being left overnight, then to provide notice that there's not going to be personnel present. So 5C says if there are no personnel on the veterinary premises during any time an animal is left at the veterinary premises, prior notice of this fact shall be given to the client. For purposes of this paragraph, prior notice may be accomplished by posting a sign in a place and manner conspicuous to the client at the entrance of the veterinary premises, stating that there may be times when there are no personnel on the veterinary premises. So the whole 24-hour thing doesn't apply. It's just specifically when it's left, there is not.
Okay, can we add, instead of the sign, some language for the, for this section that says provide some notice, some written notice, so that it's not specifically a sign?
And can I jump in?
Please.
Because on page 10, where it says, I don't know if this is old verbiage, but it's 5C, it said, if there are to be no personnel on the premises during any time the animal is left at the facility, prior notice of this act shall be given to the client. That doesn't say whether you have to put it in a written handout or in a sign.
Correct.
There's no.
It does say posting a sign.
Well, what it says is it may, as Ms. Sieferman read, the language that's not underlined is existing.
Yeah.
So right now, it says it may be accomplished by sign. So there may be other options for accomplishing the objective besides a sign.
Right.
So that's what 5C says. So if you strike 5C, then they don't have to necessarily post a sign in every case, but some form of notice has to be provided if there are no personnel present. So that, I added that explanation in the parenthetical in the memo, so it was kind of my fault that it sounds like a sign is required in every case. So I apologize for that. What the reg actually says is prior notice may be accomplished. So there are other ways of accomplishing notice besides sign.
And I think that's a very important distinction, the may be accomplished by, and I don't think that was discussed when we were debating the requirement for the sign.
Correct.
So I think that striking 5C from 2030.4C, so it would read, except for paragraphs 3 and 4 of subsection A of that section, and striking and 5C, I think would accomplish that concern.
Can you give me the page again? I'm getting lost.
Yes, I'm sorry. So I'm page 23, so it's the last page of the packet. This is the actual language that was approved by the MDC. So in 2030.4C, on the last line, it would now read paragraphs 3 and 4 of subsection A of that section. And what we can do is send an email out to all of the stakeholders to explain the rationale of that and why we feel the concerns that were raised during the stakeholder meeting are still addressed because it may be accomplished by other means.
I think that's great. Do you think that's okay, everybody? Okay.
But I thought C was exempting them from a exam room and a reception area. Am I lost?
No, 3 and 4 are those two. 5C is specific to the issue we're talking about.
So we're putting a period after the parentheses?
No, it's going to be read paragraphs 3 and 4, strike out and 5C, and then it's going to continue to read of subsection A of that section. As 3 and 4 are still part of A.
Oh, okay.
So it's up on the screen.
Parentheses isn't there.
Oh, that was on page 10, I think. Oh.
30 days is sub D. Is that what you're talking about, post-adoption? That's sub D on attachment 3.
So, yeah, and on page page 10,
Right.
5C is what we're specifically talking about.
And I think, was your question, where's the language that differentiates shelters and adds that the 30 days?
Yeah, thank you. I found it with all of that talk.
Okay. Okay, so with all of that discussion, do we have a motion?
So if you want to make that change, we'll need to slightly tweak the motion in the packet.
Yeah, I think we say as amended usually.
Well, I think for the record, for OAL's purposes, we actually have to say approve with the change. So you approve the proposed text in attachment 3 with the amendment to strike the language and 5C from subsection C, so that the paragraph reads blah, 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 so that OAL could say you approved that version and they have a written record of it.
Yeah, we usually ask Tara to read that for us so that we then, so we make sure we say it correctly.
I usually provide that information because I'm regulatory counsel.
Okay.
And I work on the motions for the board, so, but, you know, if you want Tara to do it too, that's your call.
Well, no, that was great. I'm just saying that usually when we're doing this, when we didn't have you here, we would have her read it out for us so that we made sure we did it correctly as amended.
Okay.
So you just did that for us. And I'm just not used to having you here, so I'm not sure what role we're expecting you to play. So thank you for adding that. So we have...
I'm sorry, I'm still a little bit confused, because when you go back to 2030.4 subsection C, it says it's referring to animal shelters that are providing services solely to impounded animals, but they're no longer impound. So I don't think that they should have to fulfill. I think that 5C could be an exception for solely impounded animals. I think we're changing too much. I think it should just be the ones that come back within the 30 days. Doesn't that make sense? I feel like we're actually making this more restrictive than we need to be.
My concern is if we don't do it this way, we're going to end up with requiring those facilities that only treat impounded animals and not the public animals. We're going to get back to B, and that's what we want to avoid.
I think it's also to avoid this kind of roller coaster of now we're impounded only, now we've got private animals, to allow that flexibility in case that situation occurs. You don't have to keep, oh, now I have to put a sign up, now I can take it down. So I think the idea is just put the sign up. If that occurs, then you're covered. So, or notice, written notice, right, we were talking about, sorry. Written notice, sign whatever which way they want to comply with that notice requirement, then they don't have to wonder, well, which situation am I in at this point? You just have one standard that's implemented for notice. In case that situation or circumstance occurs at that shelter, then they're already in compliance because it's something they do automatically every time. Christy?
And the concern is that, like Dr. Sullivan said, if we change too much, there is no differentiation between a private and an impound. And I think that's where we have to be very careful. Because then why are we doing all of this? They did all this work and then it doesn't change it. It's not effective.
Okay, I think we're there. Yes, please.
I would think Tara has something to say.
If the board is moving in its motion to revise subsection C to remove and 5C, this might be a good time to go ahead and make the other minor technical changes to subsection B, C, and D to insert the word "and" before animal shelter premises.
Okay, here we go. We ready for this?
I am.
Okay. So, I'm going to make a motion to rescind the prior 2019 motion approving proposed CCR sections 2030.6 and 2035.5 and approve the proposed regulatory text in attachment 3 while adding the "and" in 2030.4 B, subsection C and subsection D, as well as the amendment for subsection C to strike and 5C before of subsection A and A of that section, and to direct staff to submit the text and attachments 2 and 3 as one proposal to the Director of the Department of Consumer Affairs and the Business, Consumer Services, and Housing Agency for review, and if no adverse comments are received, authorize the executive officer to take all steps necessary to initiate the rulemaking process, make any non-substantive changes to the package, and set the matter for a hearing if requested. If no adverse comments are received during the 45-day comment period and no hearing is requested, authorize the executive officer to take all steps necessary to complete the rulemaking and adopt the proposed regulations as noticed for California Code of Regulations, Title 16, Sections 2030, 2030.05, 2030.1, 2030.15, 2030.2, and 2030.3 and 2030.4 as amended earlier in the section that I requested in the motion.
I'll second. Okay, great. Why don't we open it up for public comment in the room?
Grant Miller, CVMA. Please forgive me if I'm just lost here. What is going to happen to 2030.6 and 2035.5? Thanks.
If I could just clarify for the record.
Sure.
So part of the motion that Ms. Pulowski just made was to rescind the prior 2019 motion approving sections 2030.6 and 2030.35.5, so that all that's approved at this meeting is 2030.4 and combining it with the alternate minimum veterinary premises standards rulemaking package. That's what the motion is, just for clarification. Does that make sense to everybody?
Yes, so they're being removed, they're rescinded.
Those are being removed from the rulemaking proposal.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
No other public comment in the room. Moderator, would you please open it up to online?
Certainly. We've opened up the WebEx Q&A feature as well as the hand raise options. If you'd like to make a comment on the motion, you may click the hand icon to raise your hand, or you may click the question mark icon, type the word comment in that text box, and click send to request a comment. Each commenter will have 3 minutes with a 15-second warning. Any comments on the motion? And I do not see any requests to comment. Shall I close public comment?
Yes, please.
Thank you.
Okay, I don't see any other hands up here. Can we take a vote?
Yes, I just want to note for the record, Ms. Prado joined us virtually at 10:55 a.m.
Hello?
Dr. Solicito?
Yes.
Dr. Grant?
Yes.
Dr. Nolan?
Yes.
Ms. Pulowski?
Yes.
Ms. Prado?
Yes.
Dr. Bradbury?
Yes.
Motion carried.
Fantastic. Thank you. I think that was really good. Thanks for looking at that. And then I think we understand that that regulation better as well. Okay, so next up, we are actually skipping over to agenda item 7B. Oh,
That's
sorry.
just the
I'm
beginning.
sorry.
That's okay. It's the longest part and it's done.
Laser
so I
focused,
know,
trying
you're
to
good.
get Dr. Sullivan.
You're good.
Are you
So-
okay, Dr. Sullivan? Okay. We're just trying to make sure he makes his flight.
Oh, yeah.
So he's good. Please
This
continue.
will be fairly quick compared to our discussions yesterday, but the next two items that were originally on your agenda for consideration today, we have decided to table
until our January meeting, but I'm going to give a little bit of information on them because the subcommittees have been working very hard. So the next one would be in regards to our medical records subcommittee and recommendations for that. So as you all know, MDC's medical records subcommittee of Dr. Sullivan and Marie Assery, RVT, have been working tirelessly over the past year and collaborating with CVMA, California Horse Racing Board, and UC Davis in regards to medical records, and specifically how they may be geared more towards small animals and may make compliance difficult for herds or groups of animals. The subcommittee presented us with a very detailed list of recommendations, and those proposed amendments and deletions to Section 2032.3 and rationale were included in your meeting minutes as well, and were discussed by the MDC subcommittee, and multiple comments were received from members of the public attending our meeting yesterday. And after much discussion on the topic and further wordsmithing from the executive officer, board counsel, and subcommittee over lunch, decided to table this topic in order to have more time to work on it and ensure it's in its most complete form before moving it forward for your consideration. So the most current version of the MDC's updates to this proposal were provided to you guys in updated materials, I believe, last night or this morning, and the subcommittee will continue working on this and present a finalized version for discussion at the January meeting.
Okay, hang on just a second. Jessica?
Yeah, just a quick clarification. I did not send out the updated language to the board members yet because it's still being tabled, but I know that there were some board members who were present who might have some feedback to present, so that's able, but the updates that we made during lunch yesterday weren't provided. Sorry.
Yes, and so we do know that at least one board member present at yesterday's meeting had comments on this item, and we'd be happy to hear those or any other questions or comments from you guys at this time.
Okay, Dr. Grant, I know that during the MDC meeting, you had a question on the medical records.
I did, and it didn't seem like it'd be that much of a problem to include on the names of personnel when you put the name of the surgeon, that the name of the anesthesia be recorded as well. I know that it was pointed out that all the people who handle that animal are included in a previous section, but still, I think it would be nice to put the anesthesia there because, I mean, that's a breakdown. In my experience, there's sometimes can be 2 or 3 people. Someone does a pre-initial examination, somebody gives the drugs, somebody else is there monitoring the animal, then it doesn't wake up if you put the last stitch in, and surgeons want to know that.
Yeah, I think Christy, it looked like you were wanting to say something. I think it is addressed in the all individuals providing veterinary care or services.
And I suggested that edit, and I think it's a good one because it will cover any veterinary service that's provided, and it's got to be a service.
Okay.
And I think that would be included. Otherwise, you'd have to break out every single service that is provided. If you're going to make an exception for one type of service, you're going to want to have to do all of them. So I think just the category would cover any service provided under the Act, so I would recommend staying with that terminology.
Yeah, and I think what Dr. Grant, what you were saying is that it might be good to just add it for clarity, but I think when we're doing these regulations, we have to try and keep them as simple and straightforward as possible, and so adding additional things sometimes is frowned upon in the as it goes through the regs. Go ahead.
Yeah, because if you list one, then you have to list them all. Mm-hmm. And if you don't, because if you list one and you don't list another, they can say, well, you didn't list it. So that's why if you list anesthesia or surgery, they can say, well, you listed surgery, but you didn't list the patient ICU. So I don't have to list who I had ICU with. So that's why we don't list it out.
So why are you listing the surgeon then?
I don't think we are, and
it says the name of the surgeon.
That's interesting. Well, as we go through the MDC, as they're reworking that, I think they'll take that into account and look at that again. So it's good that you brought that up. If that has been in there, that does need to be addressed. So thank you. Anybody else?
Then I had another comment, too, if this is appropriate, on the wording. There was a couple of questions about the gender and how that's going to be listed. And it does become a problem with horses that if they're ridgelings or cryptorchids, they're not often examined, especially if they happen to be there, and they can become dangerous. So I think that's important that that's listed as well. So whenever an attempt can be made, I don't know if that goes to the wording, but sometimes it can be dangerous to check that out. But some people assume that they're gelding and they're not, and that's why they got taken to the shelter, because they're unruly and can be a problem.
Yeah, I just wanted to Dr. Grant's point, I think he's specifically speaking to page 11 in section L, and it says for surgical procedures, a description of the procedure, the name of the surgeon, the type of pre-anesthetic and anesthetic agents used, dosage, route of administration, strength, if available, and more than one strength. So that, to Dr. Grant's point, he's suggesting to add in the name of the anesthesia.
Most surgery reports have that. When you're making out a surgery report, I mean, it's usually listed already, but I think it's nice to put it in because it is, having some experience in that area, that's often where the tragedies occur.
Dr. Nolan?
No comment.
Okay.
Yeah, I would just say I know we had rather extensive discussion of the age, sex, and breed part of that yesterday, and I know that that's one of the things that the subcommittee is working on before bringing it back in January. So thank you for your additional comments.
And then in January, you actually get to make comments at the meeting.
Yeah, right. And so I'll make one more comment I was going to make yesterday, that there was a thing on whether or not keep recommendations in there as far as what the veterinarian was doing. And I think it's important with some of the cases I work with that the recommendations remain there because you're making a recommendation as to whether this horse is safe to be around, safe to be ridden, and it has to be listed, as I understand on some previous court cases, that when the veterinarians did not do that, they were held liable for the injury to the owner or the handlers on it. So I think that if it's no problem to keep the recommendations in there, that would be good. I think many times that they're being told already or it's in a discharge sheet, but I think it's nice to have that there, and I think will prevent a lot of problems if people know they have to fill that out.
Okay. We should probably just see if there's any public comment on that segment since we've just discussed it. Dr. Miller?
Grant Miller, CVMA. This might be putting the carriage before the horse since we are going to bring this back in January, but it does make sense to just remove the name of the surgeon from section L because in B we're naming all the individuals providing patient care, so we could strike that. I'd also like to remind the board that there are 4 states, Arizona, Arkansas, Missouri, and Texas, that make accommodations for the animal's temperament in precluding certain physical exam data. We're not so proscriptive in our state to say that you have to have a temperature, you have to have a pulse, you have to have a respiration. So it's not exactly a translation because ours just says you have to have physical exam findings, but these states affirmatively say that if the individual animal's temperament makes it dangerous to obtain a temperature, or if situations arise in which the examination is impractical or potentially detrimental to the animal or the examiner, that there may be a possibility to preclude that information. And so we might want to reapproach that from the large animal side. I certainly know, I've told you all before, it is not a standard of care for veterinarians to take the temperature of their patients, except for in few circumstances. I probably take rectal temperatures maybe a dozen times a year. And when you're doing a vaccine, while it's normal for a dog to do that, to take a temperature, it is not for horses. We do not do that. We feel that the data that's gathered just by the visual observation of the animal, the history that we have from the client is sufficient to justify the vaccine. So we might want to take another look at that. And then third, Dr. Grant, in response to your comment regarding the veterinary services declined, I would not be in favor of declining recommendations, because that means that your entire conversation from beginning to end is now subject to being recorded, and our medical records are already tedious. So if they're declining a veterinary medical service, such as, I suggest you do blood work on this animal, a CBC chem, and they say no, that makes sense. But if you're saying, you know, I don't think this horse should be ridden, by us having to decline something or to record the gist of a conversation. So let's say I say to them, I don't think you should ride this horse anymore, and they say nothing to me. I don't have anything verifiable in the record that I can truly say other than I told them not to ride the horse, which you have the option to write anyway in the record should you choose. If you say to them, I think you should do a CBC chem, and they say no, it is A and then B, and it's clear. If you say, you know, I don't know if this horse can be ridden anymore, and they remain silent, we don't have anything else that we can really point to in the record other than the fact that that was stated. So I don't want to get too nebulous into saying, like, every single thing you talk about in the conversation has to be written down. It should just be, in our opinion, veterinary services. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comment? None in the room. Moderator, would you open it up to online?
Certainly. If anyone has a comment on the discussion, you can use the raise hand option, click on that hand icon, or you can click on the question mark icon, type the word comment in the text box, and click send. And each speaker will have 3 minutes with a 15-second warning. Are there any comments? I do not see any request for comment. Shall I close the public comment feature?
Yes, please.
Thank you.
Okay, the next topic on our agenda yesterday was our update from our complaint audit subcommittee, which is Drs. Bradbury and Sequoia. They reported that they have had 2 more roundtable meetings with the subject matter experts since our last meeting in April. And that gives them feedback and training, and that they feel that these meetings are improving the subject matter experts' experience and the quality of the reports that the board is receiving. They've also been working on the board complaint prioritization review and presented recommendations to the MDC. And so they made recommendations of changing some of the words and potentially adding in unlicensed activity as a numbered priority for the board, and this was discussed at length amongst the committee, and public comment was taken. After all of this discussion, it was decided to table this prioritization and continue work on it by the subcommittee and be represented in January to the MDC and then subsequently to the board. We also reviewed the frequently asked questions page regarding animal blood banking, work done by Drs. Bradbury and Waterhouse, which will be put on the VMB website. It covers questions asked of the board with multiple good questions regarding payment for donations as well as transferring of blood products between facilities. And this document will remain a living document where it can be updated as more questions from consumers arise. And then we also voted on and found our new MDC chair, which will be Dr. Sullivan, and our vice chair will be Marie Ossery, so congratulations to both of them. And then we still have some pending assignments on record keeping and complaint priorities, which have just been discussed, as well as inspections mandates, which is been on hold because of the mobile app, but will be coming back soon. Also, the MDC is still working on FAQs for the spectrum of care and an article with those, and converting the California Law exam into a California Law course, and RVT pathways, and I'm sure we have more things coming our way. soon. So with that, that will be my final report as the chair of the MDC. So thank you very much for all of your help and support to me, and especially Jessica and Dr. Sullivan. So, thank you.
Great, thank
you,
you
Leah.
so much. Yeah, thank you for, I know it's a lot of work to be the chair and participate, so thank you for all of your work and for the presentation. Any more questions about the last bit of material? Dr. Nolan?
You know, I've kind of thought about this a lot as far as the idea of death or serious bodily injury, you know, we talk about. And is there any way, and I know this is in statute right now, so, but it seems to me that it would be fairly simple to just pull death out as number one and then serious bodily injury down below, because I think all of us on the board have seen cases that with an animal dying that we ought to go to the top of the list, in my opinion. And it's really hard to define the serious bodily injury. I get that, but it's pretty easy to define, I think, death. So I don't know, just a thought.
Okay. Christy, did you? No. Okay. Well, I think that's good information. So for our representatives, when they go back in January, to bring that to the group as an idea for the case prioritization. Any other public comment in the room about the last bit of material? Okay. Moderator, can you open it up online, please?
Certainly, and we've got, you may raise your hand by clicking on the hand icon, or you may click on the question mark icon, type the word comment in the text box there, and click send if anyone has any comment. And I do not see any requests for comment. Shall I close the public comment feature?
Yes, please.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you again, Leah. We are going to move on to, we're going to skip over agenda item 6 as well as 7A, and we're going to move on to 7B. And then after our discussion there, hopefully we'll be able to wrap that up in time for lunch. We'll be breaking for lunch, and then we will come back and do the MDC interviews. I just wanted to let any of the interviewees know as soon as possible regarding timing of that. So agenda item 7B, as I think as you know, originally when we went over this proposal in the April meeting, we had added the VA CSP permit holder language in hopes that thank you, the ledge proposal, I'm like, where? The ledge proposal would be picked up, and we would be able to change the statute that oversaw that. We approved the language here in 2036.5, and we acknowledged at the time that if the ledge proposal was not picked up, we would basically need to remove the language that had the VA CSP permit holder in it. And we would then just be adding that to our sunset bill, I think. So basically, it looks like during the review of this, our Reg Council had looked over it and had some additional recommendations. When I was trying to read through this memo, I got a bit confused because it was hard to see where the changes were, because everything was underlined the same. And then there were 3 attachments. So I don't know if anybody else had a hard time going through this, but what I ended up doing, which really helped, was removing attachment 2, because that was the old proposal, and looking between attachment number 1 and attachment number 3. And attachment number 1 is the original proposed regulatory language with just the references to permit holder removed. So that is the attachment number 1. Attachment number 3 had any of the language with permit holder also removed, as well as the Reg Council's recommended language changes and some additions to some of the wording. So I thought it would be quickest to go through these one by one that the Reg Council had recommended, and I thought I would say what I think the thing is. You can clarify after, and then we can have a discussion. So issue number 1, page 2 of attachment, well, it's actually issue number 1 is on attachment 1, page.
May I just clarify?
Sure.
So the first attachment is showing changes from your last meeting, so you can see what's changed since the last time you acted on it. But attachment 2 is the actual proposal with that language removed, ready to move forward if you don't agree with my suggested revision.
Oh, okay.
Attachment 3 is my revisions included within the new language proposed. So we were trying to give you many options because Ms. Sieferman indicated you may not be open to all these changes. So I was trying to do my best to accommodate that by including, in highlight, so you could see what the original proposal looked like and how it was being changed. But if you went with attachment 2, OAL would not want you to approve attachment 1 because it has highlighting and underscore that are not relevant to the changes that are being made. They like clean copies to be approved. So you would have to approve 2 or 3, but 3 is what I'm recommending.
Okay. I think so I think what we're, for a little bit of history, is when we've been reading these, at least since I've been on the board, we have, for our own ability to look through and understand what's happening, it's helpful to have all of the, not a clean copy, so that we know what's been removed, what are new changes with underlines, highlights, and things like that, and like double underlines. So that's, I think, why for me it made more sense, but now I understand why attachment 2 is in there.
Yeah, and because I couldn't get any feedback on whether these changes might be something you would consider, I was directed to make it a separate attachment 3. My recommendations, normally we just have 2 attachments, one showing the changes and one with the clean copies, so I wasn't sure, and so I've never done this before, and usually it's just 2 attachments, one showing the changes, one with the proposed language to move forward. But because I didn't know and I haven't worked with you previously, I did what I thought you would like to see. But if this is confusing, then in the future we'll just try to work with 2 attachments going forward.
Yeah, I don't know if I'm explaining it well, so I'm not. I think I am, but in any case, Jessica.
No, I think we're keep going.
Yes. Okay. Okay. So the first recommended change outside of the removing of permit holder, it looks like was recommended to keep the language in our proposed package to be consistent with the Federal Food and Drug Administration guidance. And so the recommendation is to remove the word used with administered to an animal patient, and that is in attachment 3, page 2 of 5, and attachment 3, and it is subsection F under office stock. And so it used to read, in attachment, boy, I thought I had this all like easily, but in attachment 1, page 2 of 6, it says the office stock means a compounded drug prepared without a patient-specific prescription that may be used within the registered veterinary premises, and that would be replaced with maybe administered to an animal patient. Now, there's an additional language that was added that I don't understand, so which was that is exempted from independent registration. Can you explain what that was for?
Okay, so the original text simply says that the office stock means it may be used. It doesn't say how, where, under what circumstances. So that's a clarity problem. And so what I did is, I'm familiar with compounding. I used to be pharmacy board counsel, so I think that what you were intending to talk about was administration to an animal patient either within a registered veterinary premises, so there's that situation, or one that is affiliated with a premises that doesn't have to be independently registered. Because what you have here in the original language, it says, used in mobile units and vehicles in accordance with 4853. Well, there's a lot in 4853. What exactly are you talking about? I think what we're talking about are these mobile units that are affiliated with a premises that's already registered with the board and doesn't have to be independently registered, right? So in those locations where you're administering to an animal patient, in those situations, it's considered office stock. So that's what I was trying to clarify.
Okay. Dr. Sullivan, do you mind coming up to talk with us about this?
But the mobile unit may not be registered with a fixed facility.
Right, that's what I'm saying. What I'm saying is that there's a situation that we're talking about in 4853. 4853 covers a lot of different requirements. So I think it makes it a little unclear to just point there and not say exactly what you mean. So what I think you meant was that any registered veterinary premises, which would include mobile, right, standalone mobiles, plus those mobile vehicles that are affiliated with one that's already registered, a fixed premise that's registered. Because under 4853, those mobile vehicles, units, don't have to be independently registered, and this is directly from the statute, independently exempt, if they have affiliation with a premises that's already registered. So what we're talking about is administration in the registered premises, whether they're mobile, fixed, whatever we're talking about, plus those vehicles that are associated with a premises that don't have to be independently registered, that are exempt. So in any of those situations where you're administering to an animal patient, it's office stock. That's what we're trying to say.
Okay.
And so that's why I think the prior language is a little unclear in delivering that policy. And so I thought we'd revise it consistent with what you were trying to achieve here, consistent with the FDA guidance, because we don't want to be inconsistent with that guidance. It could be a liability for the veterinarians.
Okay, I think this makes sense. Dr. Sullivan, do you have any?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I guess what I'm looking at is when a licensee looks at it, is it clear to them?
I thought this was clearer than saying used in a mobile unit operated in accordance with 4853. Now, 4853 requires mobile units to be registered if they're not affiliated with a fixed premise. So that was the clarity issue I was trying to fix.
That's fine. That's fine.
Okay. Any other questions about this? I don't see any. Ms. Prado doesn't have any questions. Great. Okay. Then moving on to the next issue, I think it looks like for, let's see here, in 2092 A1, Christy was recommending to add in subsections D and F. And with D, that includes instruction for putting compounded meds not routinely used in the medical record. And F and this is all into a procedures manual. F is instruction on what to put in the medical records, and I think the idea was that adds clarity and completeness to the manual.
Right. So my experience with compounding is the policies and procedures manual has to track what they have to document and what the procedures they have to do in every case. And since we're adding new procedures to this regulation, then the list of what should be covered in the policies and procedures manual has to be updated accordingly. So we have these new sections, and so we need to add those to make sure that tracks the requirements that are being added to the section. So,
yeah, I think since putting everything else in the manual, it wouldn't be very difficult just to add those instructions to the manual.
Because that's what staff are going to be looking at, the manual, not typically the regulation. So the regulation standards should be in the manual, all the ones that cover it.
Dr. Sullivan? Okay,
Fine.
You're okay with that? Great.
Well, I haven't had time to really look back at each of those sections, but it sounds fine.
Do you want me to read those for you?
Oh, that's
okay.
fine.
And then for the last one, I think was the IV drugs. Well, it wasn't the last. There's actually one more after that. But there was some changing of wording here. And so previously the text read, notwithstanding subsections B and C for intravenous IV compounded drug preparations for immediate use on an animal patient that contain a sterile solution that is not otherwise compounded at the veterinary premises, the name and quantity of the sterile solution and the name, strength, and quantity of the ingredients added to the sterile solution shall be recorded in the animal patient's medical record. And I think this has taken out notwithstanding subsections B and C, and that phrase in the beginning, and instead inserted the actual language from B and D into the paragraph for clarity for people when they're reading it. So the new paragraph would read, for intravenous compounded drug preparations for immediate use on an animal patient that contain a sterile solution that is not otherwise compounded at the veterinary premises, IV drug preparation, neither a master formula document as provided in subsection B nor a formula record as provided in subsection D needs to be maintained for IV compounded drug preparation. And then, however, for each IV drug preparation, the name and quantity of the sterile solution and the name, strength, and quantity of the ingredients added to the sterile solution shall be recorded in the animal patient's record. So it's wordier, but it has all of the information in one spot. It sounds like that was the goal.
I think I'm not a fan of notwithstanding, because I don't know what notwithstanding means despite what that says. So does that mean B and D apply or they don't apply? I think you meant to say they don't apply and that only you are going to require them to record the information in the medical record. So let's just say that. So for IV solution, IV drug preparation, I just created a new short form term for that whole lengthy description, only needs to be recorded in the medical record. You don't need to do a separate master formula record or a compounded drug record. You just need to record it in the medical record. That's what I thought you were getting at, and I think it's just easier to understand. I mean, you kind of have to be a lawyer to know what notwithstanding means legally. It usually means disregard, but in regulation, we need to speak in a way that's as plain as possible, so it's easy to implement.
Which is not easy.
And it's not, it's a hard subject matter. It's really, really difficult.
Dr. Sullivan?
Yeah, so is this saying that if you are not adding adding to this sterile solution, you don't need to put it in the medical record?
You do need to put it, if it's not compounded at the premises, and you're just recording the sterile solution for immediate use that's not otherwise compounded at the veterinary premises, then you don't need to do a separate master formula document,
I understand
you
that.
just have to record the.
When you say, but the last sentence says, however, that's what needs to be put in the medical record. But we also need to put in the medical record that you're giving IV fluids.
Okay, well, I was just working from your current text proposal, and your current text proposal said the only things that needed to be in the medical record were the name, strength, and quantity of the ingredients. But if you want to add also something else, some other descriptor, we can certainly put it in there. But see how, if you look at the memo, I think it's, sorry, page 3, the current text is how it's written, and then what I'm suggesting to change it to is below, and I just was mirroring what you had written previously. But if you think another descriptor or category needs to be added, we can certainly do that here. So right now it's just these 1, 2, 3 items that have to be recorded in the medical record.
Well, in the original, it does say that, well.
Did I miss something? It says drug.
No, I think we're fine.
Okay.
Well, I guess the only other comment that I would have is that it seems very, like, I think A is, the original language is actually pretty clear, and much of regulations has legalese that has to be interpreted.
Yeah.
And I feel like it's pretty complex, the wording of the second, or the recommended paragraph, and I find that might be more confusing. Anybody? Yes, Dr. Grant.
I just wanted to make sure that the consumer and the patients are being protected with sterile solutions that are made, because in horses we give large volumes. In some practices, just get some distilled water and put it in a big carboy and add some electrolytes to it. And I didn't quite get out if that's a sterile solution or not, whether they run it through by a UV light or what protections there are for horses.
Isn't mixing, if you mix two things together, isn't it compounding?
I think it is.
So then it was compounded on the premises, and this section wouldn't apply, right? Because that's what we're saying here. If it's not compounded on the premises and we're getting it from an external, I think, is what we're going for, right?
No.
Christy?
No,
or
this would be compounded on a premise if you're trying to run it through a distilled filter, whatnot, put it in a big carboy and take 2 cups of sodium chloride, another one of magnesium, and add it to it and say that's sterile solution. I don't believe it is.
So then this section wouldn't apply. They would have to do the other. But anyway, Christy?
I like the first one better. I think it's clearer. I think I can understand it better, and I think that for consumer protection, when you're clear, and I think that's one of for feedback that we've gotten, right, clear laws, that we get right, clear regs, right, clear, that's what we get all the time, and so I just think that we need to, if the word notwithstanding is something we need to change the word on that, then change the word on that. That one just seems more precise.
Okay. I don't see any other comments about that. Moving on to the final recommendation is on in attachment number 3. It's on the last page. It's 2094 2094B1. The words pursuant to paragraph 7 of subsection B of section 2092 were removed, and I guess my question would be, I think, to Tara, because I know you guys worked long and hard on these. Why was that in there in the first place?
I'm sorry, where are we?
Oh, sorry. We are at so if we're looking at attachment number 3, it's 2094B1. In the memo, it is the last part before it says action requested. And
So the proposal would be to strike the,
pursuant to paragraph 7 of subsection B of section 2092. This is, I think, where, when we're writing these, if the strike-through's there, it's helpful so that people see what changes were made, because I had to write that in on mine when I was looking at your things, just so I knew what was changed.
Okay.
I see that you, like, explained it in there, but it's hard to go, especially on the online. I printed it out, so it helped me.
Yeah.
But if the strike-through's there, it's super helpful, so we can see what you wanted,
Okay, this is good feedback, thank you.
Yeah, no problem. Thank you for all the work. I can see how much work you put into this and thought, so we appreciate that. So have you found it, Dr. Sullivan?
No.
Okay, so let's start with the memo.
Is the summary right above action requested?
Yes.
Okay.
So it has issue number 4, page 4, section 2092. Sorry.
So if you go to
for 2094.
Okay, yeah, I've got it.
B1, okay.
Yeah.
So we don't know, I guess I shouldn't say we, I am not sure as to why the language was in there in the first place, and usually language isn't put in there unless it's felt to be important. So my question is, the original language where it says name assigned to the compounded drug preparation pursuant to paragraph 7 of subsection B of section 2092, why that pursuant part was in there in the first place. So that might be a Tara question.
If you go to 2092B7, you can see how it's written. And that's why it just says the same thing as what you have here.
Okay.
So that's why I was saying it seems redundant, because it's pointing back to a section that says name assigned to the compounded drug preparation. That's what it says.
Got it.
I'm fine with the shorter version.
So why say it twice? Is what I'm saying.
I think we were trying to clarify that it's for some drug preparations, but not the sterile ones that we had carved out with the other language, because it's, it's referring, the old language was 2092B7, and 2092B was except as provided under D and E, which is that E is the IV sterile solutions, and D is not routinely compounded. You have to keep the master formula document for office stock. So I think we were just trying to identify that it's just the compounds that are prepared in accordance and identified through the master formula document. It's not any other documentation that's being maintained. I'm sorry, I'm struggling because we spent so much time on this before, and I don't have the prior meeting materials. I likely should have been better prepared for this conversation. But Dr. Sullivan, do you have any recollection of why we structured it that way?
I don't, because I'm looking back what we have on law right now, and 7 isn't even in there. So,
So it would be in attachment number 1. If you look at page 4, B7. So when you point to that section, it just repeats what we have here. It doesn't really add anything that I can see. I mean, it's a requirement for the master formula, but this is a separate requirement that we're talking about. So normally when you point to another subsection, it's to add further clarity to the criteria so people know that there's other criteria besides what you've said in that sentence.
And there is a problem with that language anyway.
Okay.
It was pointed out to me by one of our attorneys that it in referring to sections 2, if I'm on the right one. Are we on? So it's 2092 D, correct?
I'm looking at 2092E
B, I'm sorry.
for correction, but it's cross-referencing 2092B7.
In that situation, we have the name of the compounded preparation already in the master, right?
Mm-hmm.
So this is saying, well, I'm totally confused, so
You're right. That's exactly it. We had a name to be identified in the master formula document.
which includes all of the information that's needed, the strength, the amount, the quantity, the active ingredients, and
Right.
whatever.
So I guess, we're requiring the master formula document for office stock except in 2 situations. One is it's rarely compounded, in which case the medical or the documentation is inserted into the patient's medical record. And the other one is for those IV sterile solutions that are for immediate use. So in those 2 exemption scenarios, those really aren't office stock, right? These are prepared for an individual animal.
For immediate use, right?
Well, not necessarily. If it's rarely compounded, it may be dispensed.
Yeah, I'm sorry. So 2094B1 is what I was suggesting be amended.
Right, but then you keep referring to 2092E, and that's...
I'm sorry, I made a mistake there.
Okay, good.
Sorry
I was like,
about
I'm
that.
now confused.
No, it's just, I was under a lot of pressure to turn all these rulemaking materials around, and I tried to, but,
that's okay, so long as
waste,
it just
unfortunately.
confused me. So we're not talking about 2092E, that's...
2094B1 is the labeling of compounded preparation.
That was what I saw.
So all office stocks shall be labeled with the following information: name assigned to the compounded drug preparation.
Yes.
Pursuant to paragraph 7 of subsection B of section 2092, but if you go to B7 of 2092, it just says the same thing. So I just wasn't sure what...
Well, it says more than just, than the name. It also has the strength and quantity of each ingredient.
Well, B7...
Oh, it's paragraph 7.
It's just name
Never
assigned
mind.
to compounded drug preparation. It's the same.
Sorry to make this more confusing.
No, and I wasn't involved in the original drafting, so I'm just looking at it kind of from a different lens. I think the rest of you probably are more in the weeds than I am, but just wasn't sure why we needed that extra cross-reference in there. But if you think it makes sense, or we need to table it and look at it again, and that's up to you.
Yeah, I don't think we need to table it. I just think we need to agree or to keep it in there because it was being specific to something, and we thought really hard about it and decided to put it there. I think that's probably because we went around in circles on it. I think we probably will just keep that there since...
You know what the rationale would be, because we have to justify it in the...
Yeah, I think that it was because it's different than all Dr. Miller, we'll take some public comment. Please.
Okay.
This is specific to the name, Correct.
Yes.
Name assigned to the compounded drug preparation for
The reason we
2094.
did that is because there are minute differences in the concentrations of ingredients in various products. So, for instance, let's say I have 3 ingredients. One is an antifungal, one's an antibacterial, and the other one is like a diluent. The concentration of each for a cat might vary slightly from that of a dog, and so Dr. Sullivan had wisely noted that we need to do something else to make it very clear that product A is different than product B, because when you're looking at the fine print, it's very easy to say, oh gosh, that one was 0.3 mLs or 0.3 milligrams of ketoconazole, and the other one was 3 milligrams of ketoconazole, which is, 10 times more concentrated. And so the idea was, if you said canine odic preparation, feline odic preparation, it would just be one more layer of protection from stopping people from grabbing something that's 10 times more concentrated. So if you look at the history of compounded nightmares, compounding errors, they are always somebody moving a decimal point one time and making something 10 times more concentrated.
I have no concern about that part of it. It's the fact that we're cross-referencing to the same words in another section dealing with the master formula in B, 2092B7.
Right.
So it's the end of the sentence is name assigned to the compounded drug preparation.
Right. Right.
Pursuant to paragraph 7 of subsection B of section 2092, and I'm just not seeing the need to state it again. So it's like saying name assigned to the compounded drug preparation pursuant to the name assigned to the drug preparation.
Understood.
That's the legal equivalent of what you're doing here, and it's cross-referencing to a subsection of the master formula record, and I just didn't know why that was happening, because part of my job is to review the rulemaking file and approve it before it's submitted to the department and OAL.
Sure.
And I would have to be able to explain why we're saying it twice.
Yeah, that makes sense.
I don't get it.
Yeah, it makes sense.
That makes sense.
So I would just strike the rest of that pursuant to paragraph 7 of subsection B of section 2092. So you would say name assigned to the compounded drug preparation, period.
Sure.
Okay.
Just fresh. Yep.
Just
Tara?
stop it there.
So then the question is just for those IV sterile solutions that you're compounding without a patient-specific prescription, and you don't have a master formula document, there's no requirement for the name of this compounded preparation to be identified anywhere other than...
There is, Tara.
Okay.
It's 2094. So all office stock shall be labeled. Name is right there. So if, let's say that the kitty is Millie, and Millie needs 20 milliequivalents of KCl diluted in a liter of NaCl, that bag that's hanging there for Millie can be named Millie's IV fluids. And that's the name of her office stock compounded preparation.
Well, doesn't that mean there was a prescription? Because if it's patient-specific, there's a prescription for a patient, and that's not office stock.
Right, this is regarding just office stock, though.
It is. It is. The challenge is that there is, prescription has a dual meaning in our law. The order given is a prescription. A piece of paper that you write out like a check is also a prescription. They're both nouns, but one is more conceptual in terms of what has to happen in a series of orders. Office stock is pursuant to an order. It isn't specific always to a single patient, but once the office stock is... 15 seconds. If you're making it pursuant to E for the IV fluids, it's still office stock. It's still office stock. It's being used. It's something compounded in the practice. It's still considered office stock, and therefore it must have a label, a name on it.
3 minutes.
Moderator, but we don't have
I'm sorry, one
name.
second, Tara. Moderator, I just want to let you know we aren't going to have a time limit on this, so thank you very much for keeping time. Tara?
the issue was just that for those IV fluids, we don't have a name requirement. But under B, there will be a name requirement for those IV solutions if we don't do some way to identify that it's just for those drug compounded preparations as office stock with a master formula document. So either we add some language here that says for drug preparations compounded with a master formula document, then we name assigned.
Sure.
I think that's really what we were trying to get at by doing the cross-reference.
Sure, so you'd have a new section C then in 2094, which has special labeling requirements pursuant to E of 2092.
C currently is the refrigeration
Well, you would have a new C.
component.
I mean, you would just move that to D, right? So you're going to have labeling requirements for office stock, and that's going to have the name. Then you're going to have labeling requirements for the specific IV fluids in E, 2092E, and that doesn't have a name. That just has the active ingredients or the ingredients diluted.
So I don't know that we have to separate it out.
Okay.
Specifically because, well, maybe we do, because B specifically says all office stock shall be labeled with. So then if we're creating an additional name requirement just for the office stock that has a master formula document, likely we would separate that out into a new subsection C. Dr. Sullivan?
Yep.
Well, we keep going back to IV fluids. The IV fluids are for immediate use only. Okay, if they're not used within 4 hours, then they become office stock and need to be documented either in the medical chart or on the master formula.
That's a good point.
So the purpose of isolating the IV fluids was with the idea of we already know what they are because they come already prepared. But if we add something to it, then we need to put the label on there that has what's in there and has the initials of who compounded it. Otherwise, it's immediately used, and it doesn't require the compounding regulations other than identifying what is added to it. But if it's not used immediately, then all of those exemptions go away.
Yeah, I mean, I think that the IV fluid talk came in because of the error in the reference to it, and so we started looking at IV fluids again, but that wasn't part of, like, that's already dealt with, I think, the IV fluids in the document and how that needs to be labeled. So to me, it seems like it's fine to remove pursuant to, like, we've already thought through 2094B and just added the subsection B of section 20, paragraph 7, subsection B of 2092. It really was just sending us to the same words.
It's just not office stock. That's what Tara's saying. Office